This remains intact for 200 years or whatever. Contrary to popular beliefs, things kept on changing in the past, probably even more than it does now. At least in the 19th century, because it was probably the most innovating century ever, when the most changed everything all the time, was actually the 19th century. I mean, come on, they went in 1800 from the starting locomotives, the very, very beginning of locomotives in 1800, to actually having aeroplanes and racing automobiles that could go up to 100 kilometers per hour by 1900. So imagine that. Imagine the change in only 100 years. So things constantly changed back then, according to makers, according to standards, according to year by year and all. So it requires almost just one person to be an expert in each field to be able to tell. Clearly, I'm trying to date. This would probably be a hat back in the 30s, late 30s, for a sort of upper middle class person for say a special occasion, or more upper class. But think upper middle class is in the high upper middle class, like myself when at least I was a kid. So in today's money, I'm not sure how much my father had, but in today's money, I guess my father would be worth, in today's conversion, back in 2000, $800,000 at least. And in today's world, the bank in the Western world considers you rich by $10 million. When one is worth $10 million, so with all assets, with the cars and everything, the house and all. So when I was a kid, probably no more than that. Probably more like, I don't know, maybe like $2 million he was worth or something. So that type of upper middle class. But back in the 1930s, the very high upper middle class, or, maybe not the highest, because some upper middle classes are actually generally rich, as in today's money worth more than $10 million, but generally high, not your average upper middle class. So, because back then most people were not wearing top hats anymore, and this is still entirely handmade. But again, because I'm less into the 30s, I don't really know. Also, I am a little bit, my mind is confused right now. I was doing too many things, so it is hard to tell, and I don't want to tell something wrong. See, because I noticed that now, there is ever so slight diagonal piece, you can't see it on the camera, so it is so well hidden with the hairs, but they actually put the silk root is open, as I explained previously, and it's stuck like that, So this is where it was sewn, prior to pulling it on top of the gauze crown. And obviously, so back in the 30s, this would have been worn for races, formal weddings, very formal. They still had white tie events in the evening, but it was being replaced by black tie and such like. And usually also people going to these events were either going there rarely, or they were more of a high upper middle class thing. It was not as common of wearing a hat like that just because one was going to the bank, or just because one was a lawyer, like in the 19th century, early 20s. So it was really more of a special occasion thing, so really more with a higher class of people, so essentially lesser people had them. But this was still a very high upper middle class, I would say, because of the still high quality of that one, and how we reviewed in other videos. I have not do it again. But also, it could be that people cared more for clothing back then. So essentially, it was not necessarily of a higher class or more wealthy than the person having this one. This is almost impossible to know. Perhaps it was just because it was normal to care more for your dress, so it was normal to spend more. So because it was still a normal upper middle class, but he just wanted a very nice hat, he purchased that one. The one will never really know that. There's no way of knowing that, at least. And perhaps some sort of, at least I cannot know that, as per now. This is really trying to be Sherlock Holmes, and I'm far from Sherlock Holmes, so I cannot know exactly what type. I can just say the probability. Like, again, I would say probability-wise it was owned or purchased by a British person, since it is an English hat made in England, and it was found in England, but perhaps it was actually a Dutchman that was black, and he lived in England, who knows? And this is really getting into the personality of the hat, but obviously, see, this feels way sleeker, so I try to revise everything, the texture of it, the lightness of it, See, it is a way straighter with flat. I talked about that already. See, interesting, where they saw prior to putting it, actually this was one piece. So you see in there, the silk was one piece. So I think they saw the edge. Yeah, there's a stitch. They saw the top, which might have been a slightly different cloth to the sides, to this. But prior to doing that, they probably saw this together. Which I showed in the Dutch 1950s video on them making top hats in black and white. They show how it is not very precise because back then they didn't have HD cameras. And then they would insert everything into a block. So it was like a big block. It was kind of the shape of the crown, and they would insert it prior, probably after sewing the sweatband or before. Was it made the same in there? In the other one, yes, I foresee it was, because this is where it completely cracked in a diagonal way. See here, this is where it was stitched, I'm certain. I can still see the stitching where it has not broken at the very top edge. Also, these lining breaks, do not replace them. Yeah, never mind. Yes. So, essentially, it is very late now. I'm just trying to see if there are any more important things to talk about. Essentially, they had sort of regularized how they were making hats since the 1860s, because, see, for example, the backing of the silk is practically the same thing. You know, super OCD people like me might spot some differences, but honestly, it's still a black cotton backing. This declare the Silk-Plush is gone there in that spot. And where it has gone there on the sides, it is kind of the same color, kind of the same cloth. If anything, it looks a bit darker there, but it could be because of wear, because of the chemicals they put in it ages differently. And there, as you may see there on the more antique one, it actually broke. The entire cloth broke, so this is the Gossamer, that one is seeing there. Which people think it is cardboard, if it's Gossamer. There's no cardboard in these hats. So obviously, yes, so, see, if anything, the workmanship there, but this is ready for super micro differences. It seems like it was curved more there. It's essentially the same type of making. This is still harder to make. It's more because of a fashion thing. They were meant to look like that, super shiny, but I just want to keep it like that. And some people wore them like that. Again, like that, it looks like a very high quality felted wool, peluche, wool, felted wool felt. From either wild hair, beaver, nutria, and or a mixture of either both or three of those animals. I already made full videos of explaining those materials. I'm not going to do it again. So these are the two hats. 1875 to 1890, most likely 1875 to 1880. It is still probable to 1890, but the most likely dating 1875 to 1890. Up to now, I'm less an expert in those years. Just let me remove this piece of junk. Yes, most likely 1925, 1930, I would say. Yes, I would say that. Up to now. I may alter I do not think I will ever alter my view for that, because I kept saying that, and now it has been 15 or more. Since I was 15, I kept giving the same dating, and I have not altered it, because I kept revising, and it always ends up being most likely that same dating. But for that I know less, so it's possible I will later on say perhaps actually 1930 to 1935, but now most likely 1925 to 1930. I know it is English, I know the maker, I know everything, because everything is still original and intact, as it says inside. So, yes. So, that is it. The hat video is at last done, so, yes, cheerio.